It was Halloween night, my favorite night of the year. The air was crisp, the streetlights cast long, spooky shadows, and my friends and I were on a mission for the best candy in the neighborhood. We were about 15, probably a little too old for trick-or-treating, but we loved the tradition. Dressed in our costumes, I was a vampire, my friend Sarah was a witch, and Liam was a zombie. We were having the time of our lives, laughing and comparing our hauls. That's when we first saw him. Standing under a flickering streetlight at the end of the block was a figure in a clown costume. It wasn't one of those new, flashy ones. This was an old, faded costume with a slightly creepy, vintage-looking plastic mask. The smile painted on it was wide and unsettling. We didn't think much of it at first. It was Halloween, after all. Clowns, creepy or not, were part of the package. We just assumed he was another trick-or-treater waiting for his friends. We continued on our route, hitting a few more houses. As we turned onto Maple Avenue, I glanced back. The clown was still there, about half a block behind us, just standing. A little shiver went down my spine, but I brushed it off. "Probably just lives around here," I mumbled to Sarah. She nodded, her attention already on the next house, which was known for giving out full-sized chocolate bars. An hour later, our bags were heavy, and our feet were starting to ache. We decided to take a shortcut through the park to get back to my house. The park was darker, the path lit only by the occasional moonbeam peeking through the trees. We were joking around when Liam suddenly stopped. "Guys," he whispered, "don't look now, but I think that clown is still following us." My heart did a little flip. I slowly turned my head, and there he was. At the entrance to the park, standing silently under the archway, was the same clown. He wasn't moving, just watching. He hadn't gotten any closer, but he hadn't left either. He was just there. The playful Halloween atmosphere suddenly evaporated, replaced by a thick, cold sense of dread. He wasn't holding a candy bag. He wasn't talking or laughing. He was just a silent, watching presence. "Okay, this is getting weird," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "Let's just walk faster. Don't run, just walk faster." We picked up our pace, the sound of leaves crunching under our feet seeming unnaturally loud in the quiet park. Every few seconds, I couldn't help but look back. Each time the clown was there, maintaining the same distance, his masked face a blank, smiling horror in the darkness. He wasn't running or even walking quickly. He was just keeping pace. We finally burst out of the park and onto my street. My house was just a few doors down, its porch light a welcoming beacon. We practically ran the last 100 feet, fumbling with the keys as we scrambled onto the porch. Once inside, we slammed the door shut and locked it, leaning against it, panting. For a moment, we just stood there in the entryway, the silence broken only by our ragged breaths. I crept to the living room window and peeked through the blinds. My blood ran cold. Across the street, standing directly under a streetlight, was the clown. He was looking right at my house. The painted smile on his mask seemed to stretch wider in the pale light. He just stood there, perfectly still, for what felt like an eternity. We watched, frozen, as he slowly, deliberately raised one hand and gave a little wave. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of Halloween night. We never saw him again. We never found out who he was or what he wanted. But that image is burned into my memory, the silent clown under the streetlight, just watching. It turned our fun Halloween night into a terrifying memory that still gives me chills. Some things are scarier when you never get the answers. If you have any creepy Halloween encounters of your own, I'd love to read them in the comments. I thought Halloween had ended hours ago, but when my doorbell rang at 3 a.m., the night wasn't over. It was just waiting for me to answer. All the decorations were dark, the kids were tucked in bed, and the last lonely candy bowl sat empty by my front door. I was exhausted from handing out treats all evening, and my wife had already gone to sleep. I remember standing by the front window, just looking out at the quiet street. The pavement was wet and gleaming under the orange glow of the streetlights. A few pumpkins on my neighbors' porches still flickered faintly, their candles melting down into little pools of wax. It was peaceful. Still, by midnight even the wind had died down. Then around 3 a.m. I woke up to a sound that just didn't belong. Ding-dong. At first I thought I'd dreamed it. You know that half-sleep confusion where you hear phantom noises? But then it came again, two slow, deliberate chimes echoing through the silent house. I froze. Who in the world rings a doorbell at 3 in the morning? The bedroom was dark except for the soft blue light of the digital clock on the nightstand. My wife was still fast asleep beside me, breathing steadily. I really didn't want to wake her, so I slipped out of bed and grabbed my phone. And there it was, a notification from our Ring camera. Motion detected at front door. I opened the app, fully expecting to see a drunk teenager or some idiot pulling a late-night prank. But when the feed loaded, I literally stopped breathing. A child was standing on our porch. He couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 years old, short, thin, wearing a black hooded costume with a torn cape. His face was half hidden in shadow, but I could just make out pale skin and what looked like dark circles around his eyes. He was holding a small orange plastic pumpkin bucket, the classic kind kids use for trick-or-treating, and he was just standing there, motionless. I turned up the volume on my phone, and faintly, through the crackling mic, I heard him whisper a single sentence. "Please, I need to finish." I just stared at the screen, totally confused. Finish what? Trick-or-treating? At 3 in the morning? For a second I thought maybe he was lost. Maybe his parents were out looking for him. But the street behind him was completely empty, totally still. Then he raised the little pumpkin bucket higher, right toward the doorbell camera, as if he was showing it to me. I heard it again, clearer this time. "Please, I need to finish." I don't know why, but the way he said it didn't sound like a plea for candy. It sounded like a rule he was being forced to follow. I whispered to myself, "What the hell?" and backed away from the phone. The live feed was still running and the boy hadn't moved an inch. That's when I decided I had to wake my wife. By the time she came downstairs with me, the Ring app was still open on my phone, but the porch was empty. "He's gone," I told her. She frowned, squinting at the screen. "Are you sure it wasn't just a kid from earlier? Maybe the footage lagged or something?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "It was live." She suggested calling the police, but I hesitated. I don't even know why. Something about the whole thing didn't feel criminal. It just felt wrong in a completely different way. We checked the peephole anyway. The porch was empty. But just before I turned away, I thought I saw something move at the end of the driveway, a small shadow darting behind our mailbox. I unlocked the door, opened it just a crack, and was hit with a gust of freezing cold air. The street was dead silent, but the air smelled strange, like damp earth. I stepped closer to the edge of the porch, and that's when I saw it. A trail of small, wet footprints on the concrete. Bare feet, tiny ones. They led from the sidewalk straight to our front door, and then they just stopped. There were no prints leading away. I followed them with my phone's flashlight, my heart pounding in my chest. The closer I looked, the more off they seemed. The prints were too flat, too smooth, almost like they'd been pressed into the concrete by something not quite human. Suddenly, the Ring notification chimed again. Motion detected. I looked up at the live feed and I nearly dropped my phone. The boy was standing behind me. Not directly behind me, maybe 10 feet away at the edge of the porch, but he was close enough that I could hear his breathing. Slow, shallow, and uneven. "Please," he whispered again. The same words, the same hollow tone. "I need to finish." I spun around, and there he was. His hood had fallen back, revealing a face that just looked wrong. His skin was a pale gray color, his lips almost blue. His eyes were sunken, but open wide, way too wide. And his candy bucket wasn't empty anymore. It was full of something dark, heavy, and wet-looking. I stumbled backward into the doorway, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My wife screamed from the hallway, asking what I'd seen, but I couldn't even speak. I could still hear him whispering through the door. "Please, I need to finish." The whisper faded after a few seconds. When I finally dared to look back at the ring feed, he was gone. The police came later that night after I finally worked up the courage to call. They searched the whole area, checked with the neighbors. No one else had seen a kid out that late. No footprints, no signs of anyone. The next morning, when the sun came up, there was a single piece of candy sitting on our doormat, a small wrapped caramel. And every Halloween since, at exactly 3 a.m., my Ring camera goes off again. Same time, same porch. But the feed is always empty, except for the faint, chilling sound of a child's voice whispering, "Please, I need to finish." We thought it was just another house on our Halloween route. Lit up, decorated, perfectly ordinary. But by morning, the entire house was gone, and every photo we took of it had vanished too. Last Halloween, my friends and I decided to try our luck in a neighborhood we'd never been to before, a place called Willow Creek Lane. Someone online swore they gave out full-sized candy bars, so of course we had to go. It was me, my best friend Logan, his girlfriend Alyssa, and my younger brother Tyler. The air was cold enough to see your breath, and the fallen leaves crunched under our shoes like shattered glass. We'd been walking for about an hour, our bags getting heavy when we reached the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. And that's when we saw it, a house that none of us remembered being there. It was set back from the road, framed by these tall skeletal trees, and it was covered in Halloween decorations. Orange lights, fake cobwebs, and glowing jack-o'-lanterns lined the steps. But the weirdest part? Every other house on the street was dark. This one was lit up like it was waiting just for us. As we got closer, we could hear a faint, eerie melody, an old music box version of "This Is Halloween." "Guess we saved the best for last," Logan said with a grin. But as we walked up the cracked driveway, the feeling shifted. The decorations were a little too realistic. The names carved into the fake tombstones looked weathered and real. The plastic skeletons on the porch had teeth that were all slightly different, like they were authentic. We just laughed it off, assuming the owner was just a Halloween fanatic. Alyssa rang the doorbell. The chime was distorted, like it was playing in slow motion, echoing for way too long. The door creaked open and a woman stood there. She was pale, with dark hair, wearing an old-fashioned dress straight out of a 1950s photograph. She smiled, but it was a cold, empty smile. "Well, aren't you four just darling?" she said, her voice echoing strangely. "Out so late." My brother Tyler, ever the optimist, stepped forward. "Trick or treat." The woman's smile widened. "Of course." She reached into a bowl and dropped something heavy into each of our bags. I glanced down and saw mine wasn't candy. It was a small, round object wrapped in wax paper, with a faint red stain seeping through. "Thank you," Alyssa said, already pulling Logan away. "We should get going." The woman just kept smiling, that unnerving smile. "Be safe out there," she said. "Not every house stays when the night ends." We all froze for a second. Then Logan gave an awkward laugh and we hurried down the driveway, not looking back. Halfway down the street, I couldn't resist. I unwrapped the thing she'd given me. It was an old, cloudy white marble with a swirl inside. But when I held it up to the streetlight, I saw it wasn't a swirl. It was an eye, a tiny, glassy human eye staring right back at me. "Dude, what is that?" Logan whispered. I dropped it instantly. It hit the pavement, rolled in a perfect circle, and then cracked open. Something wet and dark seeped out, staining the concrete. That was it. We ran. As we reached the main road, I risked one last look back. The house was still there, but its lights were going out, one by one, like someone was slowly flipping switches. The pumpkins were the last to go, their carved faces flickering until there was only darkness. The next morning, I told my mom about the weird house. She just frowned and said there was no house at the end of Willow Creek Lane, that it had been an empty lot for as long as she could remember. I didn't believe her, so we drove over there. And she was right. It was gone. An overgrown patch of weeds and cracked concrete was all that remained. No driveway, no porch, no house. Just nothing. Even stranger, when we checked our phones, every picture we'd taken was still there except for the ones of that house. The files were just corrupted static, like they'd been partially erased. Later that week, I went digging online and found an old forum post from 2003. It mentioned a house that used to be at the end of Willow Creek, one that burned down on Halloween night after the owner went missing. It said people still saw lights there, but only on October 31st. And the last line made my blood run cold. If you ever go there and someone gives you candy, don't take it home. They only appear to finish their last Halloween. I never saw that house again. But every year, my security camera catches a faint orange glow at the end of the street on Halloween night. And just last year, I swear I heard it again. That slow music box tune drifting on the wind, just after midnight. If you have a spooky experience you'd like to share, drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more strange tales. Stay safe out there.